From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. I have to tell you that when I heard that your call sign was Tuna, Charlie Tuna Moore, I was expecting you to look a little more like Charlie the Tuna. Beret, sort of tuna
the cool
face,
glasses, and the
cool
sunglasses. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't look like him at all. So where did this come from? From Recorded Future News, this is Click Here's Mic Drop, a longer listen to one of our favorite interviews. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. And today, a conversation with Lieutenant General Charlie Tuna Moore. He's the former deputy commander of U.S. Cyber Command, and we talked to him at a moment when the future of American cyber defense feels unusually shaky. We sat down in Nashville at Vanderbilt University's Summit on Modern Conflict and Emerging Threats, not too long after NSA Director General Tim Hawk was unexpectedly fired. Were you surprised?
I was surprised.
And the surprises didn't stop there. Offensive cyber operations against Russia were reportedly paused. Massive reorganizations are underway at the Pentagon. And it feels like the ground is shifting. And no one, not even the generals, are sure where it's going to land. Stay with us. Click Here is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here's Mic Drop. It'd be easy to assume that a call sign like Tuna came from a moment of embarrassment. But in the world of fighter pilots, sometimes nicknames are less about humiliation and more about just belonging.
I spent the first two-thirds of my career flying fighters, aircraft. And so when you go to your first operational squadron and you become mission ready, they give you a call sign. It's almost like welcome you into the brotherhood and sisterhood and the family. And so therefore, they're going to call you what they want to call you. Most of the time, those call signs involve things that you have messed up during your training. And I was no different. They had plenty of material to work with. And I'm a big water sports fan. And so Charlie the Tuna is what they settled on. And I guess I should be thankful for that.
It could have been worse.
Could have been much worse.
General Moore logged more than 600 hours flying combat missions. But by 2015, the battlefield was changing, and so was his role. He left the skies behind for a new fight, an invisible war waged across networks and servers. He and General Timothy Hawk were part of the same constellation at U.S. Cyber Command. Moore as deputy commander, and Hawk first director of intelligence, then later as the head of the Cyber National Mission Force. Their timelines overlapped. Their responsibilities did too, at least at times. And while they may not have shared the same office or even the same briefings, they were both part of Cybercom's leadership in a formative moment, when digital threats were growing and the U.S. was still figuring out what cyber war really meant. So when the news broke that Hawk was fired...
We do have this breaking news out of Washington, where the top two leaders at the National Security Agency have been ousted. A U.S. official...
It hit hard. Where were you when General Hawk was fired?
I was at home, and I clicked on a news feed and saw it come up. And the first thing I said was, okay, well, is this accurate? I want to look at a couple different sources. And so I did. And then so it appeared to be accurate information.
The firing of General Timothy Hawk wasn't just unexpected. It reopened a debate that never really went away. Since 2010, U.S. Cyber Command and the NSA have shared a single leader, a dual-hatted role designed to unify intelligence and operations in the digital realm. But it was never without controversy. One agency spies, the other strikes. And some believed putting both under one hat, on one head, blurred too many lines. So when Hawk was dismissed, the question resurfaced. Is it finally time to split the two? General Charlie Tuna Moore knows the debate well.
I'll give you a little bit of background on that. When I was working on the Joint Staff, I was actually asked to conduct a study. Should we split these two organizations? And I can tell you at that time, I didn't have a dog in the fight. I'm just trying to get to what I think is ground truth. And the outcome of that was pretty clear to me. There was no compelling reason to split the two organizations, but there were plenty of reasons not to split the two organizations. We need this close alignment between our digital information gathering enterprise, the National Security Agency, and then the organization that's responsible for achieving effects in that domain. And we want the unity of command. We want the unity of effort because we need to be able to operate at speed. If you don't have one person in charge, then everything tends to become overcome by events, and you don't necessarily make the right decisions and the timelines that matter.
General Moore contends that cyber attacks move so quickly, you don't have time for a committee. You need one person, one decision, one chain of command. The concern is that clarity and that unity may be starting to unravel. And that's next in our conversation. We'll be right back.
For decades, China's economic rise has been symbolized by the unstoppable force of low-cost manufacturing. But today, a new and far more disruptive wave of competition is unfolding. One that threatens not just Western manufacturing, but also the West's geopolitical dominance. I'm journalist James King, and in my new audiobook, Global Tech Wars, from Pushkin Industries and the Financial Times, I'm unpacking what China's rapid technological ascent across cutting-edge industries like artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and surveillance technology means for the future. Find Global Tech Wars at pushkin.fm/audiobooks, Audible, Spotify, and wherever audiobooks are sold.
Across the U.S. government, strains are becoming hard to ignore. There have been deep staff cuts at the Digital Service Office, mass layoffs at CISA, an entire cybersecurity review board dismissed, and most recently, a reported pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia. So General Nakasone and I sat down a few weeks ago, and we talked about a pause in offensive cyber, allegedly ordered by the Secretary of Defense. And General Nakasone at the time said, look, we've done pauses before. This is not as unusual as everybody's making it sound. And he said, but, CISA is continuing apace. NSA is continuing apace. Now we've had an accumulation of events that makes this seem a little more problematic, given the firing of Hawk, given cutbacks at CISA. Are you worried?
In what specific way?
That we're making ourselves more cyber vulnerable.
Well, obviously, when you let somebody go from an organization as big as the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command, that's disruptive. I don't think anybody can argue that. On the other side of the coin, the way our system's set up, the president is allowed to have anybody in senior positions that he feels is the right folks for him or her. And, that's the way things work in our system.
The system, it's supposed to allow for sudden exits, mid-mission shakeups, and sometimes even strategic silence. Still, Moore says, there are reasons to be optimistic.
We don't know, a lot about what the next budget, for instance, is going to look like. But I am really optimistic that the development of advanced capabilities within the cyber or the digital space, AI, does seem to be a priority for the administration.
But priorities don't always translate to practice. Budgets are cut, posts are vacant, missions stall, and even Moore concedes the threats haven't gone anywhere.
And to your question more specifically to the threat during this time period, the threat's significant in this space. It has been for years. It's only getting more so, I think, for our country and from a national security perspective. And so we have to be vigilant and we have to make it a priority.
Some have proposed an even more radical step, make cyber its own branch, like Space Force, but with keyboards. General Moore says that would be a big mistake.
What we need is a DoD-wide culture as it relates to cyber, not a standalone specific service one.
Tell me what you mean.
What I mean is we no longer have tanks, airplanes, ships, and things that move through space. We have computers that move through the battlefield, that fly through the air, that fly through space, and that float in the oceans. So whether you're talking about the computer or you're talking about the networking of all those computers and the sensors in the battle space, that's important to every other service's mission accomplishment. If you create another service, it is so easy to look and say, well, that's their responsibility. As opposed to understanding, no, it is part of your responsibility if we're going to succeed.
A cultural shift, he says, not a structural one. Which brings us to what he thinks is next. So the panel you're on here at the summit, one of them, is predictions for 2025. What are your predictions?
For me, I don't know what the next year is going to hold or what might be surprising for anybody. That's one of the other aspects of the digital environment is this is extremely hard to predict from a threat perspective. Unlike, the domain, I spent most of my career in the air domain, and it applies to land, sea, space. We tend to have pretty good intelligence capabilities, and we tend to be able to look out and determine what we believe our adversaries are doing, and then we're able to prepare for that over the course of many years. In this domain, things literally come out of nowhere, whether it's a zero-day or some type of malware or some type of capability like a large language model.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's inevitable that we're going to have a big critical infrastructure cyber attack in the near future?
I don't.
Oh, really?
No, I think, well, let me qualify it. If we end up in a position where we're going to end up in conflict, then yes, I do. I think you'll see some of that. If I set aside crisis that leads to conflict, I don't. I think in general, other nation states are starting to understand what's considered an act of war and what is not.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. So obviously with all the Typhoon series things that we've seen, whether it's telecommunications or critical infrastructure, the Chinese were in those locations gathering information.
Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon. They sound like disturbing weather patterns, and in a way, they are. Volt Typhoon is a Chinese hacking operation targeting U.S. critical infrastructure, water, power, communications. We talked about their efforts in our episode on Tuesday. Salt Typhoon is focused more on surveillance, targeting telecom systems to monitor and collect data on global communications. Both operations were designed not to blow anything up, but to be ready to if conflict ever broke out.
That's called intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, or espionage in the cyber domain, however you want to label it. And obviously, lots of countries around the world, including the United States, do similar types of activities. But if you're in critical infrastructure, like a power company or part of the power grid, you're only there to figure out how it works and to position yourself so that you can take action should this crisis or conflict start to occur. There's no reason for you to be there unless you plan to take that effect and potentially do that. And actually taking those actions and causing that effect would, without a doubt in my mind, cross the threshold into what most countries around the world would consider an act of war. And what I think we really need to do is, from a policy perspective and working with our friends and allies around the world, we need just to be very clear and very vocal that shouldn't be allowed. Because essentially what you are doing, you've basically planted an explosive, under that bridge or on that railroad crossing. And, you haven't caused an effect yet. But if you wanted to, you could at any moment. And we would never put up with that in the physical space. So why are we putting up with it in the cyberspace?
Got it. So do you think that things have fundamentally changed now that we have found that Volt and Salt Typhoon are in critical infrastructure and consumer critical infrastructure?
Well, I think it gives us an opportunity to do exactly what I just talked about. I just read this morning that during a recent engagement before the end of the Biden administration, that the Chinese didn't actually admit to it, but they came as close as they can, saying, well, this is what you get because of your positions on Taiwan.
China has stopped short of confessing. But according to multiple reports, including leaks from recent back-channel talks, Chinese officials didn't deny their hand in Volt or Salt Typhoon. Instead, they issued a kind of shrug. They told U.S. counterparts, if this happened, well, maybe you should reconsider your stance on Taiwan. Not quite an admission, not quite a denial. What they were saying was these weren't rogue operations. These were strategic pressure points held in reserve. And Moore says that's intriguing.
This is a very interesting development, and I think it leaves the door open for the current administration to take this very strong policy approach that I just talked about and build a coalition of our friends and allies to make it very clear this is unacceptable. These are civilian-type targets. There's no reason for you to be there unless you intend harm.
So could you imagine a scenario in which they say, this is what you get when you raise tariffs 125%?
It's going to be interesting to see their response. I mean, we could see them respond in the cyber or physical space to their displeasure. And I'll be watching it very carefully like everybody else because I think they're in a significant disadvantaged position economically. And they know it. And I don't know how it's going to resolve or when it's going to resolve. But I do not think you want to be China in this position right now.
Meaning they need us more than we need them.
100%.
We like to think that China needs us more than we need them, that their economy is more tethered to ours than ours to theirs. But in cyber, the power dynamic isn't measured in exports or imports. It's measured in patience and presence, and what you might not have seen coming. From Recorded Future News, this has been Click Here's Mic Drop. It was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gaida, Zach Hirsch, Lucas Riley, and me, Dina Temple-Raston. It was edited by Karen Duffin. We'll be back on Tuesday with an all-new episode of Click Here. Have a great weekend.
If you're looking for a daily guide to cybersecurity news and policy, sign up for the Cyber Daily from Recorded Future News. It serves up the day's most interesting and important cyber stories from our sister publication, The Record, and then aggregates all of the big cyber stories you might have missed from news outlets around the world. Just go to therecord.media and click on Cyber Daily to get all you need to know about the world of cybersecurity right in your inbox.